This is CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. This is Python's Paradise, your film and music show, and this is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena. And folks, I have a wonderfully gifted musician on the phone with me today. In fact, I knew her from a movie back 35 years ago where she was just a little tyke, still playing the instruments we're going to talk to her about. Yes, that takes a lot of devotion, folks. More devotion than I had for any of my subjects in school, I'll tell you that. I give you folks the wonderfully gifted and beautiful Lili Haydn. How do you do, Lili?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Python. Yes, Python. And how did you come up with that name?
You know what? I have a love for African wildlife. Plus, I found too, like growing up, I was not the popular kid. And so I kind of related to animals that were more looked down upon, like snakes or the spotted hyena. Two animals that really make a difference in the environment, but are hardly credited for it.
I can relate. I like that.
Yeah. So I kind of threw that name together, and I think the name Python sounds like a good name for a DJ. So
Definitely. Well, thanks for having me.
yes, absolutely. I kind of got inspired too because when I watched American Graffiti years ago, I noticed the scene where Richard Dreyfuss encounters Wolfman Jack. And when he goes into the station, he hears the voice, the Wolfman's voice. But when he goes into the station, he encounters the real person who's sitting there with melted popsicles. And he's trying to, eat all these so that they don't melt all over the place. And he offers Dreyfuss one. But what Dreyfuss is seeing there is the real guy, not the Wolfman. He's seeing the real human being. And then when he makes his request, please get the Wolfman to say this, so he could get the message out to the woman in the white Cadillac. And when he walks out of there, he hears the Wolfman's voice, and he turns and he sees him on the air. And what was interesting is, he's one way on the air, he's the Wolfman character. And when he's off the air, he's the guy eating the melted popsicles. And I kind of got a little inspired by that.
Yeah, I love that dichotomy.
Yeah. But, it's interesting because I was reading up on you before I was doing this, set to do this interview, and I did not realize you're Canadian.
Yeah, I was born in Toronto. I was only there for the first couple of years of my life, and then my mom, who was a wonderful comedian, my mom moved us to Los Angeles, where she was also a stand-up comedian. Where she was also a singer-songwriter. She had a publishing deal in Los Angeles, so she came out here to pursue her music and comedy careers. So I became, acclimated as an American. But I've always, kept my relations with my friends in Canada, and obviously always, not obviously, but sometimes American politics have made me feel a little bit less, a little bit like an outsider. So I definitely have kept my kind of Canadian identity kind of brewing or cultivated.
So the current political situation doesn't have you running back here yet?
Oh, you know what? We've been talking about it, actually. I'm working on getting my Canadian passport. So,
what's interesting? Because I've lived here in New Brunswick my whole life. I'm 46 years old right now, and it wasn't until 2 years ago that, actually I shouldn't say 2 years, last year actually, almost 2 years ago, that I actually left New Brunswick for the first time because one of my Canadian actress friends invited me to a horror film convention in Toronto and wanted me to be her assistant, and I couldn't say no, and it was my first time in a plane. And it
oh
was,
my goodness, wow.
yeah, I was nervous because anytime, I'd go from Fredericton to St. John or Moncton, which are nearby cities, and I'd get homesick. So I was afraid to go anywhere. I went to Toronto and I didn't want to come back. And I went again this
Wow.
year.
Hmm.
Yep, and it was nice to hook up with this actress, and it was Lisa Langlois. She's a good friend of mine now, but I've had her on a couple times. But yeah, Toronto is like home to me right now, and um, uh, it's funny because I was watching Ralph Rex the Internet recently, and it's funny how when they had Vanellope was on there talking about how the internet felt more like home to her than the video game Sugar Rush, and I was like, man, that sounds like me.
Hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, you're always welcome back here in Canada.
Well, thank you so much. I come back sometimes to perform, and I hope that we'll be able to bring some of the. I've got a new group that with a new record out, and actually a new soundtrack album out for a film that just was released on Friday in the States. I'm hoping that it's also. I think it should be available. It's in theaters in the States, and it's on demand. It's called Driver X, and it's a kind of a sort of a comedy drama in the style of Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, and it's starring one of the stars of Better Call Saul, Patrick Fabian. So we've put out a wonderful soundtrack album called Driver X, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to tour a little bit with that as well. There's a bunch of new songs on there that were written for the film, and it's really worth checking out if you haven't.
Are you familiar with my neck of the woods here in New Brunswick?
I'm not actually.
No.
So tell me about it.
We're 1 hour ahead of Toronto, so I'm 4 hours ahead of you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I always tell people, I said our closest celebrities are the Trailer Park Boys. So if you're familiar with them, you might be familiar with us a little bit. But no, Driver X. I doubt we're going to get it here, and yet I loved your video that you sent me of you in the cab in the back of the cab, and Patrick there driving, and you're just having a wild time there, and he's getting into it and having the best cab drive of his life.
Yeah, that was fun. You guys have Uber and rideshare up there, right?
Not here. We got it in Toronto, though. It was the first time I never even knew what an Uber was until I saw Office Christmas Party. And that little
Oh,
scene with
okay.
Jennifer Aniston, being annoyed by
Uh-huh.
the Uber driver. I never knew what an Uber
Uh-huh.
was. And I went to Toronto, and I was hanging out with Lisa, and we took some Ubers, and I was like, that was an interesting experience.
Yeah, well, it's the new reality, and this movie really shines a light on what it's like for people who are driving, and it's kind of the adventures that he has, and while he's driving, and it's kind of deep and funny, and it's really a worthwhile film. So if anybody's listening and wants to check it out, please do, and check out the music. I composed the music for the score and also a bunch of the songs.
You're not in the film?
I'm not really acting anymore, Python. I was a child actress and I loved it, but it really was not my passion. My passion is music, and so when I graduated from college, I did a little bit more acting, but I kind of got. I wasn't really inspired by the roles that I was going up for, and it was very time consuming. And the life of an actor is pretty, it's pretty whimsical. And so I thought, if actually, to quote my mom, Lotus Weinstock, the wonderful comedian, she used to say, "Well, there's got to be an easier way not to make a living." So I chose music, which is even harder than acting, but I'd started playing violin when I was 7, but I really you go where the love is, and my love for music is just boundless. It's just that's the zone where I connect to all the big forces of the universe, and I'm able to then connect with anybody that I meet, whether or not we speak the same language, whether or not I come from different backgrounds. And I've gotten to, as a solo musician, I've gotten to play all over the world, but as a as a side musician or as a collaborating musician, independent, freelance musician. I've gotten to collaborate with everyone from Roger Waters and to Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, to Herbie Hancock, to Parliament Funkadelic and George Clinton and Sting, and the list goes on. And then I don't know if any of your listeners would know who a wonderful singer who's no longer with us. His name was Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. He was the big voice in that Peter Gabriel used in his score for The Last Temptation of Christ all those years ago, and that really brought him into the attention of the Western world. But he was called the voice of the century, and I got to play with him. And so it really, I went from being a very unpopular kid myself to being able to really kind of share, a real authentic degree of closeness with anybody that I meet when I get to play with them. And it's really the thrill of a lifetime. So that's my passion, and I now I perform and I make records, and I also score films, and and that's actually where I get to kind of engage my dramatic sensibilities, my acting sensibilities, which I think actually gives me a bit of an advantage as a film composer. My sensitivity as an actress. That's where I get to blend, kind of take those acting sensibilities and blend it with my musical sensibilities. So it's a great, a great place for me to do everything that I love and I'm talented with.
I need to ask, you say you were playing the violin since you were 7. Do you remember that? Now, this is a tough one. Maybe it isn't a tough question, but it's a pretty heavy one. Do you remember when you first wanted to play the violin? That moment you decided, this is what that this instrument interested you? Like, do you remember that?
Yeah, well, I'll just quote my mom. My mom used to joke that I had learned to play violin in the womb, and it was very irritating. So, but actually, my mom had a rock band when I was a kid, and I remember she had a violinist in her band, and I really loved that. So she got me this tiny little baby violin, and I didn't really play it, but I would pretend that I was playing when I would watch the woman who was playing with my mom. And then when I was 7, I had a dream that I could play violin, and I told my mom, and she always had a dream that there was a violinist in the family. So when I told her that, she honored that, and I was a couple of years ahead of younger than my class at school, and I auditioned for the orchestra, but they didn't have a violin that was small enough for me, so they wouldn't let me in. And I came home crying from school, and my mom took us right to the music store where we rented a violin, and then with the money that I made acting, I bought my first violin when I was 8.
Wow! And do you remember your first time going out on that stage? Were you nervous or were you confident?
Well, I kind of grew up on stage. I mean, and actually, to keep quoting my mom actually was performing all while she was pregnant with me. She actually got booed off stage by 10,000 people once while she was pregnant with me, because she told them it was a rock concert, and she was opening for a big rock band. And she told them that her breast milk had just come in, and they didn't want to know about that. And they booed her, then go home now. And so they booed her off stage. And my mom told me that she felt that immunized me from stage fright. So it's not that I don't get nervous. It's not so much that I get nervous, but, there is a degree of adrenaline. And, I've learned how to ride that adrenaline, to kind of channel it into energy and focus for a performance. I just kind of naturally, I would perform with my mom when I was a kid, and there was really, it was kind of a natural progression when you're raised by somebody who's a performer. I would come on stage with her, and then it was really about communicating. And then there was a moment in my 20s when I was touring with, when I was kind of performing the material for my first record that was on Atlantic Records. And I used to have these shows that were kind of, sometimes they'd be great and sometimes they'd be, it was hit and miss. I was a young performer. But I did a lot of benefits for good causes, and I noticed that whenever I would do a benefit for, people who were sick or starving people or a good cause, it was always a good show because there was a sense of purpose and a sense of giving that happened. Whereas when it was like a professional or a commercial show, I felt like it was more like a look at me kind of thing, and that's always a little bit scary, So I did this benefit to raise money for cancer, and one of the women in a wheelchair who was sick came to the show that I had the following night at a concert hall in Los Angeles, and she was sitting in the front row in a wheelchair, and it was really a perspective shift, and I realized, why are these two kinds of shows different? Everybody's got their own story, and I made the transition, and I realized that whenever we as performers are doing anything, or anytime we communicate, it's an opportunity to give. And when you're coming from your heart, when you're giving, it stops being an ego trip if you're really kind of present for it. And when it stops being an ego trip, then it's really just kind of, it's if you believe in God, or if you believe in a higher power, if you believe in, anything beyond what we, know in our limited sensibilities, then it becomes really a transmission of love or divine energy. And that basically takes care of the nerves. It's not that there aren't kind of, a little bit of adrenaline or like, a little deep breathing or whatever, but it becomes really a gift and an opportunity to connect with people and to do, and to kind of fulfill your purpose as an individual, which is to make the world a better place.
Yes. Well, you know what? We're going to come back to your music here momentarily, but beforehand, going back to your actress days, we're going to go back 35 years ago. Can you believe it's been 35 years since you played Rodney Dangerfield's little girl?
It's hard to believe.
Yeah, Easy Money. Now, this, of course, was fresh after Caddyshack and pre-Back to School. That was back when Rodney was really on his game. And, of course, you played the sassy Belinda. You had your hair on the pigtails. You were all...
Well, yeah, I was just a little girl, and I was a good impressionist. The audition really it consisted of imitating Rodney Dangerfield, like basically mimicking him to his face. And I was a good mimic. I still am. So we got, and I performed with my mom. I did comedy with my mom. So it was kind of a natural fit.
You have a favorite Rodney Dangerfield joke?
I don't know if it's really a joke, except that the thing that really stuck with me from my experience with Rodney and actually that movie was when he says, "I don't know how to go to sleep. I only know how to pass out." And really, I feel that probably influenced me more than than it should have, because I basically also don't like to go to sleep. That's the one vice I have. I don't do drugs. I barely drink, but I do go on these. I hate to go to sleep. In fact, I'm exhausted now because I don't go to sleep.
No? Well, I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate to miss anything.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, except for me when it comes to my pay job. Sometimes I feel like skipping that, but I can't because I got bills to pay.
Yeah.
Because I'm a volunteer here, but nonetheless, yeah, Easy Money. I remember seeing that, and I gotta say, I love that opening of the movie where it just shows Rodney's hands, and I love the fact that it's panning across with the credits, and it's playing the Billy Joel song, Easy Money, and it just shows. Of course, he's playing a baby photographer, and you got all this stuff there, film and stuff, and of course, stuff to do with his daughter Allison's wedding, and all this stuff. And I thought that was an interesting way to open that film. How creative!
Oh yeah. Well, they were hilarious. I mean, they were all Saturday Night. The director had been the director of Saturday Night Live, a lot of sketch comedy. So he was, they were very creative and an hilarious bunch.
Yes. And of course, I think Rodney had some of the great lines in the film. Of course, the plot of the film, his mother-in-law supposedly dies, and in order to make an inheritance of a lot of money, he has to lose so much weight, stop drinking, stop smoking, give me a drink and a cigarette, so I can think this over. you know, and there were so many great lines in that film, for example, he's rushing down the stairs and he goes, her mother. It says, oh, it says Joe Pesci's character, right on time. I don't want to see her effing, sees her, and then opens the door to the mother-in-law. Mother. And of course, I loved it when he tells the mother-in-law that she's the inspiration for twin beds.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, there was so many great lines in that movie. So, but no, I've always been a fan of Rodney Dangerfield, and I loved him in this movie, and I think a lot of people, especially people dealing with addictions, can relate to what he's dealing with and trying to make this charge and other things going on in his life. Tell me about working with Rodney.
The truth is that I was pretty young and I was pretty self-absorbed.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really, he was very nice to me. He was funny. I think, I honestly, I sort of, when you asked me to be on this podcast, I tried to warn you that I don't have a lot of memories about this.
That's okay.
I mean, it was really more that he was just very nice to me,
Mm-hmm.
and he was funny and, respectful, and, I was little and more concerned about how probably more concerned about how I was being perceived than I wish, looking back, I wish I had been able to take in more. It was my first time on location for that long. And it was, it was a New York winter, and we were, it was fun being around all those funny people, and Rodney, it was hilarious. So that's kind of, I don't have anything more, anything pithier, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say.
Well, I gotta say, I remember some of your really, really funny scenes in the movie. Like, I remember one, if it wasn't for Belinda, he probably wouldn't get in half as far in this thing as he did, because she was your character was the one that was making him do stuff. I remember the scene, for example, you're sitting on the floor reading a book, and he's trying to do some push-ups, and he's reaching out and he grabs the back of your shirt and he's trying to haul himself up, and then you can see the look on your face, like that he's cheating, and then he's like patting you on the back, and then you look around, you say, 5 more or something like that, and he passes out.
Yeah. I had I I've always been comfortable as the disciplinarian. My mom and dad were both kind of hippies, so my form of rebellion was kind of being straight-laced. I'm hardly straight-laced now, but I do have a healthy respect for discipline and being, kind of getting stuff done. So it wasn't a real stretch for me. I think it was good casting.
Yes, I loved it too. You were going around the house with him, making sure he empties all the stuff he's not supposed to have in the garbage. And I love that shot from inside the medicine cabinet. And you reach up there and you tap this box. Like, he's not going to hide anything from you. You already know what's going on. Like, you're way ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went on from easy money to basically focus on my studies as I went through my awkward early, my awkward transition into teenagehood. And then my next project was a remake of the show Gidget,
I
where
remember
Gidget
it.
was an adult and I
Yeah.
was one of the two teenagers she hung out with. And so I did that, and then and that helped. That all of this helped me pay for college,
Mm-hmm.
where I went to Brown University
Mm-hmm.
and studied political science. And but in between my studies, I would come home and rock out with people on the violin. And when I fell in love with jamming with people, and it was the spirit just completely hypnotized me and captivated me, and I never really looked back. I've still been in different movies and stage performances, but mostly as myself
Mm-hmm.
or a musician. And I started singing when my mom sadly passed away, because she had always been the singer. And when she passed on, I felt I had to carry the mantle for both of us. And I really had something to sing about. And now I've kind of blended my my love of politics and human rights and justice with my musical identity and my dramatic sensibilities, and into scoring films and making music that is, sort of has a social consciousness, aspect to it. And but I love being a part of the film world in my own unique musical capacity. Actually, I'll tell you one of the places. I don't know if you've seen the show Transparent.
I know what it is.
Uh,
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but
Oh, it's a great TV show um, starring, what was his name? Jeffrey Tambor.
okay.
And it's really hilarious, wonderful, wonderful TV show. And the creators of the show saw me perform. And actually, interestingly enough, it was at the memorial for Taylor Negron, who played Julio in the
Mm-hmm.
movie Easy Money.
Yep.
And he was a dear friend of ours. He and my mom had been very close, and he and I continued to collaborate, actually, over the years. We did a show at the Edinburgh Theatre Festival where he told stories and I played my music along with the stories. And then when he sadly passed away, I performed at his memorial, and Jill Soloway, who created Transparent, heard me play something at the memorial, and she asked me to be on her next season of Transparent. And so I contributed additional music and I did some on-camera stuff for the show Transparent. So that was kind of a way that I got to sort of be both composer and actress in a way as well. So I still do that, but music is really my focus.
I got a question. When you were in Easy Money, you played, of course, the violin in the film. Was that written in, or was that in the script, or was that just something that they saw that you could do and that was brought into it?
Yeah, so they knew that the writers and actually one of the producers they ended up kind of having a connection with my mom and knowing a little bit about me. And once they cast me as the daughter, they decided to incorporate it because they thought it would be a funny gag to have him, have me practicing and have it, make his hands all jittery as I played my tremolo.
I loved it when Joe Pesci comes in there and goes, "What's that?" And you go, "Scales." And he goes, "Scales, never heard of him."
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta say too, going back to Taylor Negron, I gotta say, I thought he played the most interesting character in that movie because the way you see, we're seeing everything from Rodney's perspective. And of course, the daughter Allison, played by the wonderful Jennifer Jason Leigh, fresh off Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Love Jennifer. Anyway,
Yeah, of course.
oh, love Jennifer. Do you have any memories of Jennifer?
She was also just lovely to work with. She was, she was very. She was. What should I say? She was really a trained actress. I mean, she came from serious acting. I think her father was. Can't remember who her father was, but her family
Vic
was,
Morrow.
like old Hollywood. And so she really, approached it very kind of seriously, considering it was a comedy. But it was she was really in it, and she was extremely professional. And it was a new world. I had really just come from being a child actress, and so I hadn't done that many films, and this was really. Like a full on, when you're on location and really living with people as family, you get to see a glimpse into, how they approach their art. So she was very serious about it. I haven't really kept in touch with her, but the couple of interactions I've had with her over the years have been very nice. She's, it's always great to see how she's continued to be at the top of her game and be celebrated and in the public eye and really fantastic. So,
well, I was going to say Taylor Negron was one character. I like what they did with him because we're seeing this all from Rodney's perspective. And when we first see Taylor, they're at the wedding and Rodney's asking Allison, he goes, "What do you see in this guy?" And she goes, "He's everything I ever wanted." And he goes, "You don't ask for much, do you?" And of course, he says to the wife, he says, "See the guy for what he is. He belongs to a gang." And she says, "They're a good boys gang." And it's funny how right she was and how we're kind of with him, but yet she was right. And it's funny because Taylor Negron's character, he comes off as this badass, but he's really a softie. And I'm going to tell you, there was one scene in that movie I found so inspiring. So inspiring. Was, we know that because of Rodney, Allison goes back home to live. They're kind of separated. And, of course, Taylor wants Allison back. And I love the scene where he shows up outside the window and he's got his buddy hiding in the bushes to tell him what to say, and I love this. He comes out there and he goes, "Allison, I'm the man. Come down," and he's all awkward, jumping up and down. And I love the mother comes to the window and she goes, "Who is that?" And I love your line. She goes, "Julio in a hedge," But I found it so inspiring where the guy in the bush says, "Tell her you're going to kill yourself." And he just kind of pauses there and he shakes his head and he goes, "I don't talk like that. I don't talk like that." He said, "If you know so much about women, you talk to her." He goes, Allison the hedge has a few things to say. Allison the hedge Allison." He goes, "I don't know what to say." But I love the fact, as broken as he was, And as much as Rodney perceived him negatively, he was not going to stoop to self-destruction. He wanted to win her back, and he was a genuine good guy, just like the
Mhm.
mom said. I found that inspiring.
Oh, good. I wish Taylor. Well, Taylor was a good guy. He was a really hilarious, special, and uh, just truly unique perspective. I mean, he really he just his his take on things and his um, his hilarious perspective of the world was just, it was so delicious. If you have a chance, if you haven't followed Taylor's career, he has some wonderful films, of course, but his storytelling was just spectacular because you get to hear how he perceived the world in this kind of glorious and ironic and adorable and kind of theatrical and technicolor way that just it's truly magical. He was a magical being, and he sadly passed away 2 years ago, I think. And I had the good fortune of collaborating with him on a show where he told some of his fantastic stories, and I played music that was sort of the musical complement to it. And then I don't know if you're familiar with the podcast, the Moth storytelling podcast. Taylor, one of Taylor's last public performances was for the Moth, and it's a story called American Gothic or
Okay.
California Gothic.
Okay.
And it's hilarious. So please, if you have a second to listen to that, it's hilarious. So yes, so it was a blessing to work with him.
Well, of course, you kept on with your music, and I see your first album came out in 1997, self-titled Lili. What was it
Mm-hmm.
like putting together that first album?
Well, I had been performing with a lot of other bands, like so many that I was playing so often with so many different bands. My mom actually called me a jam slut, and she meant it as a compliment. But I was really, I was seeing a lot of people getting record deals at the time, and I felt, I was really, and as I would play with people, I started hearing my own music, and I started feeling like I really had something to say on my own. And a lot of it was born from kind of the influences of people I was playing with, but it was also that, when I would play on somebody else's song, I was playing these solos, and I kind of was like hearing these melodies. I kept playing the same solo in different people's songs because I was hearing it was my own voice emerging. And as it started to really get stronger and more developed, I started performing on my own, and then I got this following, and I was doing these weekly shows at the now they've just closed down the Hollywood's Viper Room. It was owned by Johnny Depp,
Okay.
and I had these weekly shows, and we started getting kind of a real kind of, it became a scene, and I got my own record deal, and I was ready to I was on fire really with so many ideas and the influences that I didn't even know. People told me I needed to listen to Led Zeppelin because I was doing lines that were reminiscent of Zeppelin, and I had never heard Zeppelin because I was raised, my mom was writing her own music, so she wasn't really listening to pop music. She wasn't listening to other people's music. And then I was being trained in classical music, which was my passion. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any popular music frame of reference or I didn't know what was going on, but I listened then, to Led Zeppelin and Kate Bush, and I was like, oh my God, these artists are incredible. And that was kind of, I guess we had some of the same influences because that was the kind of music I was making. And so when I was given this record deal, when I earned this record deal, I took it as an opportunity to really just be as uncompromising as possible. And for the most part, they really gave me free rein. They kind of pulled me in a little bit, and I had a couple temper tantrums because I was, it's my record. I will do what I want. And but it was, that first record. I listened back to it, and it's just kind of unhinged and experimental, and like just it kind of it still kind of impresses me with the kind of scope of ambition and kind of fiery creativity that I had then. And I ended up getting kind of tamed as I tried to fit in as I kind of tried to fit into different, categories, in the following records. Not that I never really fit into a category, but that first record was really like the culmination of all my experiences, my 24 years of having been, the child of my two renegade parents and the actress and the political science, the social justice warrior and the jam slut and all of this kind of came together. And I was also dating at the time the grandson of Nat King Cole, Harley Cole, who was a wonderful musician, and he really turned me on to some of the crazy and ambitious music of the 70s, which I really had, he's kind of schooled me. And so, it was like, well, of course I'll follow this song with a 4-minute, jam that is, barely related, but kind of, subliminally related. And it was just I'm just very grateful that I got to express myself so in such an uncompromising way. And then it spoke to critics. It was critically acclaimed, and Jimmy Page and Robert Plant actually invited me to open for them on their last U.S. tour because of that record. And then it took me another record which I love and still is, something I'm very proud of, but it was a little bit more controlled. And I worked with Bill Laswell, who was also great it was all experimental. All of my records have been experimental, but the first one was really unhinged. And then I finally returned to that sort of unhinged quality on my record Lilyland. Which was one of my last ones. And actually Place Between Places has a lot of that as well. And on that one, Roger Waters heard that and invited me to come play and sing the lead with him at Coachella and play and sing lead on Comfortably Numb at Coachella. So it's all been very kind of wild and I guess experimental is and I really do thank my lucky stars that I've been given these opportunities to be creative, and I continue to be inspired.
Well, you did Lily in '97, then you did Light Blue Sun in '03, and then after that it was Goodbye Stranger in '07 and Places Between Places in '08. Now, why Goodbye Stranger and Places Between Places are so close together?
Well, Goodbye Stranger was an EP, so that was only 3 songs, and that was done because I had been asked to do a cover of the song Goodbye Stranger for the show Army Wives.
Okay.
And it was a really cool rendition. So the label wanted, actually a Canadian label, Network Records, felt that it would be a good opportunity to put out a little kind of teaser for the record that was going to be forthcoming that I was working on at the time. So we put that out, and it did pretty well. And then we put out the next record, Place Between Places, and that was really a dedication to my mom who had passed away, and that had a lot of songs that were really, inspired by kind of transcending loss. My love songs to my closest person, to my soulmate, my mom, and then taking, sort of transcending loss, and turning it into kind of a love for the world.
Yeah, and of course your group, Opium,
Opium
Opium Moon. I know you sent me the a couple videos. One of them, of course, was from Driver X, but you sent me. I love the outfits you wear. The kind of almost like is the word gypsy like sound right on that? Almost.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
definitely I my playlist, the playlist that I listen to, really are very much inhabited by are really more about world music. So I love Indian music, and I've gotten to play with some wonderful Indian musicians and Pakistani musicians, and gotten to perform with African musicians and descendants of. So I've gotten to play with Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan and Prince Diabate, who's of the Diabate lineage of Malian kora players, and I've gotten to play with a lot of rock people and jazz people, Herbie Hancock and Joe Sample, and then funk and you name it. It's really been a very, very eclectic musical life, and so when you put all that eclecticism together, it kind of I love bright colors, and I love Indian fabrics, and so it sort of comes together as this kind of gypsy-ish feel, as if I've been on the Silk Road, and that's really what Opium Moon is about. A couple of years ago, I met this incredible Persian hammered dulcimer player, and he had such a gorgeous sound. I just knew that he and I had to make a record together. So I brought my now husband, over to his house for a dinner party, and we jammed, and it turned into Opium Moon. And it's really sort of like the child of the Silk Road ensemble that Yo-Yo Ma has with all of his multicultural musicians. It's there are a handful of themes, and some traditional melodies, but most of it's just improvised around these themes, and we have a blast. And it's just the record that just came out in July is it's truly healing music and inspired, and if any of your listeners have an opportunity to check it out, please go to opiummoon.com or check it out on my website, lilihayden.com. It's very special and kind of really transforms the energy in a room. It's both spiritual and sensual, and just love it.
I love watching, I've watched a number of videos of you online and performing, and I gotta say, I love it when you get right into the performance, and I see your eyes are closed, and I'm under the impression that you're picturing something in your mind, and you're just letting the music take control, and I love watching you move on stage. You really put a lot of energy into your music and your performance. I've enjoyed watching those videos.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, it's when we all have something that puts us in the zone, or at least we all try to have something that puts us in the zone, in the flow, as they say. And music is my flow, and so when I close my eyes, I'm basically just kind of letting the spirit come through, and I'm being told what to play. Sometimes it's a technical feat that I need to just kind of focus for. But most of the time, I'm just kind of trying to kind of let the great the big love, the river of love flow through me, and kind of get out of the way.
Yes. Yes. Well, where did you come up with the name Opium Moon?
Well, when I was listening to this music, when we were listening back, it was just sort of so dreamy and so kind of otherworldly. I was describing it to somebody, and I said it's kind of like the music you might hear in an opium den. And then we started referring to it as the Opium Project. And then I found out that there was a band in Russia called the Opium Project, and they were like heavy DJs, and they had a pretty good following, actually. And they looked as though they might be actually selling opium. So we knew we couldn't do that. And then I was kind of like, well, every time I tried to come up with something that wasn't opium related, it just didn't kind of have that dreamy quality. And then a writer friend of mine suggested Opium Moon, and we all kind of liked it. We had a little trepidation because of the opioid crisis, with fentanyl, that's claiming so many lives. But this is the antidote to that. We hope. This is not drug related. We actually really decided once we thought we had this kind of opium vibe. Then we were reading this Sufi poet, the great Persian poet Hafiz, who said the bird's favorite song you do not hear. It's the song he sings when his wings are stretched high above the trees, and he's singing the song of pure freedom. And he's playing the song of the opium of pure freedom. So it was really, I'm paraphrasing there, forgive me. But it was the opium of pure freedom, and we realized that really is what this is. We're not constrained by normal pop structures. Some of our songs are 17 minutes long, and it's just really flowing, and it's the opium of pure freedom, and it really is the divine love. It's the big love coming through, and it's both psychedelic and sensual and spiritual.
You performed with so many interesting people and toured. Do you have any interesting stories from the road and with the people you performed with?
Oh, sure, yeah, of course. When I was touring when I was opening for Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, so I was raised in Hollywood, and my mom was a stand-up comedian, and we used to have Christmas with Jay Leno and Bill Maher and Jerry Seinfeld and Larry Miller, and so I was around celebrities my whole life, and as a child actress, I acted with people who were famous, and it really didn't faze me at all. Celebrity was kind of just sort of like, these are our family friends. It was no big deal. But when I was out on tour with Jimmy and Robert, I went out to a restaurant with Robert Plant on one occasion, and I had never seen a level of celebrity like that. This was a different level of celebrity. People came over and started to cry and shake and bow to him. And it was really something like I'd never seen before. I mean, they were just musicians, great musicians as far as I was concerned, but it was another level of celebrity. I just and they were gracious. And Robert was hanging out with me, and he said, Lili, sometimes I think I'm just a caricature of myself. And he said, but you know what? I like it.
Well, that's great stuff. And of course, you're still doing that today. And of course, you got Driver X. Talk about Driver X a little bit here.
So Driver X is the second film that I scored by this director named Henry Burial. He's an award-winning director, and it's about this guy who owns a record shop, and in the wave of Spotify and streaming, the record store goes bust, and he needs to pay his mortgage, and he can't get a real job because in music, which is really all he's qualified to do, it's all about kind of millennials, and he's older now, and so he starts driving for Uber, for a rideshare company. It's not exactly Uber; it's a fictional Uber, but it's called Driver X, and his marriage is strained, so he starts having these adventures and kind of finding himself while he's driving around the world, and driving around Los Angeles, I should say, and it's kind of like a modern day Odyssey, where the different rides are like the different islands that Odysseus goes to, and in each adventure kind of teaches him something about himself, and so it's a really fun, and it's funny and kind of deep and subtle, and it's got a pop sensibility, and I wrote songs and score for it, and it's really fun. It's starring one of the stars of Better Call Saul, which is the Breaking Bad sequel, or prequel, I should say, and it's Patrick Fabian. And I had actually never gotten into Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, so I decided as this movie was coming out that I should just check it out. And I, of course, got addicted to Breaking Bad, and I've just started Better Call Saul. So he's great, and it's got this kind of subtle, kind of dark humor, and it's great.
I was watching the video for that you did. Talk about putting that video together where you're in the cab with him.
Well, it's essentially we decided we would do sort of like a continuation of the Uber-like rides that you see in the movie. So we actually used a little bit of the footage from the film, and Patrick Fabian from the movie agreed to star in it, and the director of the film directed the video, and we just had a great time. Played the song, and I decided to I just happened to have a performance at a club in support of for a benefit concert for a friend's hospital bills. In America, we have to do fundraisers for our friends when they get sick, because we don't have health care here. So I can't tell you how many people I've had to donate to their their crowdfunding to help them pay medical bills. It's really obscene, actually. It's interesting. Anyway, so I happen to have this performance, and we decided we would try to get Patrick Fabian up to sing with us, and so we filmed the ride, and then we filmed him getting up on stage with us, and it turned into this delightful video.
Absolutely. Yes, you've done a number of film scores. I know Pirates of the Caribbean, at World's End, and others. Which of those? Talk about doing that.
Well, I started out scoring films after being a part of the kind of musical team of some big, famous, much more successful film composers asked me to be a part of their, part of their scores. So I was a part of several films with Hans Zimmer, who scored Pirates of the Caribbean, and of course, so I was the solo voice and violin on Pirates of the Caribbean 3 and 4.
Okay.
And I'm the voice of Scary Mermaids I'm one of the voices of the Scary Mermaids in Pirates of the Caribbean 4.
Okay.
And I'm scaring children in perpetuity at Disneyland. And then I've worked with Harry Gregson Williams on a couple of films, and he's fantastic. And Marco Beltrami, who, these are all Academy Award winning or nominated film composers. Marco Beltrami, I was just the solo violin and voice on the Ben-Hur movie, the remake. So when you hear Jesus dying, that's me screaming in the background, singing in the background. It's wonderful to be a part of the sound. You until I started scoring, I didn't realize how important the score was for films, but it really brings the heart and soul to a lot of films.
Oh, yes.
And so it's wonderful to have worked under such, extraordinary talent, and then when friends asked me to, I started scoring after a friend, Rupert Isaacson, asked me to score his film The Horse Boy in 2009, and that's a wonderful documentary. It came out in theaters and should be, I think it's on iTunes, and you can get it on demand. And I went on to score several documentaries and several narrative features, and Driver X is my latest. But I really love it. And if anybody listening to you, is making a film and would like some help musically, I'd be delighted to contribute.
Absolutely, and you're well worth it, of course.
Well, thank you so much.
Yes. No, I watched a video on YouTube. I think you were performing Kashmir. I think, and it was in Calgary. Was it Calgary? I don't know. It was somewhere here in Canada.
Oh, cool. Was I playing it? Was I playing it with Pedro Plant?
I actually don't know. I was just watching some performances of yours in preparation for this, and I was just I remember the name of the song, but other than that, I was just watching your performance, and you getting into it, but I remember it was in a Canadian location, and aside from that, I don't know, but that was when I kind of discovered you were Canadian. I did not know that about you until just recently.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm maybe this podcast will help me get my Canadian passport. Canada, especially now that everybody wants to come to Canada, it's getting harder and harder to get, to get papers.
Why is it getting so hard?
Well, I think, there's a lot of people who are concerned about being in America now.
No, but what? Yeah, but why is it so hard to come to Canada, though? Like, I know an actress right now who's got dual citizenship, but she said that she had to jump a lot of hoops to get into Canada, and so I'm sensing it's a difficult job. So
So I have dual citizenship, but it's they don't want any riffraff. You've got a great country there, so you got to make sure you don't let anybody in who doesn't, who isn't worthy.
Well, we can say this: Lili Haydn is worthy. We want her.
Thank you so much.
We want her and her violin, and we want Opium Moon all here in Canada. We want her all to ourselves.
Wonderful. All right. Well, from your mouth to Canadian government's ears.
There you go. So what's coming up in the future? What projects you got coming up that you can talk about?
Well, we're waiting to find out if Opium Moon is going to be, make it to the final round of Grammy for the Grammys, and we are hopeful for that. And I'm going to be performing, songs from the Driver X soundtrack and some shows in America, and I'm up for a couple of other films as a composer, but it's it's a pretty freelance situation here. But I don't know if you're familiar with TED Talks.
I am.
The foundation, Technology, Entertainment, and Design.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wonderful organization, the TED Foundation. So I've done 3 TED Talks, or 2 TED Talks, and all with music, and also, and then one just straight performance of just violin. And that was in Vancouver this last April, and so that's online. And then I literally just got back this weekend from doing my 4th TED Talk, and that should be coming up online very soon. And this is something that's really a dream come true for me. I was asked to perform. I was asked to write something for the Civil Rights Museum a handful of years ago, and it's a song. And I wrote a song called "I Am a Man," and it was inspired by the iconic signs that were worn by the civil rights freedom fighters in 1968 when they marched with Martin Luther King.
Okay.
And I'll just give you a little background. In 1968, the sanitation workers in Memphis were living under subhuman conditions, and they were being, they had dirt pay and no safety laws, and 2 of the workers were crushed by a garbage truck with no reparations, and it was the last straw, and they went on a citywide strike, and Martin Luther King flew in to march with them, and their picket signs didn't say higher wages or safer working conditions. They simply said, "I am a man." And when I learned this, I was completely blown away, and I wrote this song, and it's been my dream to do this, to perform this song with a multicultural choir, because I realized that those 4 words they declare what's at the center of every movement, which is, I deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. And so I was able to, with this last TED Talk, I was able to get a multicultural choir, 26-piece choir, and my rock band, and we performed "I Am a Man" with this choir, with gospel choir, with African Americans and Asians and Native Americans and LGBTQ people and disabled people, and we all sang "I Am a Man" together. And then I did this kind of fiery rock violin solo. And I talk about how the Me Too movement is really linked to the Black Lives Matter and the peace movement, because we're all really saying the same thing. We have this in common, that it's really our fight to be treated with respect and dignity. So this presentation was literally just filmed yesterday, or actually Saturday, I should say, and I'm very excited to share that. So if I don't know when your podcast will air, but if any of your listeners are interested in this, it promises to be a really powerful performance. Everybody was amazing, and it's really a dream come true.
Well, you know what? This is fantastic. You know what it kind of put me in mind of? When Alice Cooper did the song "I'm 18," and I never knew what the song was about until later in life. That it was really about the Vietnam War. Speaking of "I Am a Man," and he's got those lines in the lyrics where it says, "I am a boy and I'm a man, I'm 18," and it's about being shipped off to Vietnam. That's what that kind of put me in mind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and especially in America, the way we treat our veterans, it's shameful. We send them off to wars, most of which are not, not for any reason but to feed the greedy military-industrial complex and protect our oil interests.
Yeah.
And then they come back and they have PTSD and injuries, and we don't support them. And the homelessness in America has, in parts of the U.S., has gone up by 75%.
Oh, wow.
In the last several years.
Yes, absolutely. That, there's just so much going on, and there's only so many charities you can give to too, because I've given to several just this month alone, and I couldn't believe it.
Hmm.
And but yeah, you got a really huge gift for music, and wow, it's amazing. You were 7 years old when you started with the violin, and I
Hmm.
understand you play piano as well.
Well, I compose on piano. Violin and voice and viola are really the only instruments I feel kind of comfortable really performing with. But I play a little bit of everything. I can kind of make music with, music is my first language. It's my first
Mm-hmm.
real emotional language. So you put me in front of anything, and I will hear music in it, and I'll do my best to make something fun out of it.
Just out of curiosity, how many violins do you own?
I own one good classical violin and one old sort of trusty. I call her Old Faithful.
Mm-hmm.
She's 250 years old from England, but not not a fine violin, but nice. And then I have a pickup. I have a bridge that has a little electric pickup in that. Um, so I can run through guitar effects, and I run through wah-wah pedals and kind of do a little Jimi Hendrix vibe. And then I have a violin that I got for $40 on Craigslist that I use. It's really a prop violin that I'll carry around if I'm doing if you've watched any of my music videos, if I've got one where I'm playing on the beach. Well, I would never bring a good violin to the beach. So that's the prop violin. And then one that somebody that I met on Facebook, a luthier who makes violins, sent me for me to have as as another violin, and it's a lovely violin with a lion on it as a lion head scroll.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Well, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you so much for including me in your show. And it was good timing because I hope I hope it comes out in time to still support the Driver X film, and it's a delight to talk to you. Thank you so much for being in touch.
Well, you know what, Lily? It was fantastic having you on the show today and celebrating your music and reminiscing about Easy Money and Driver X. Um, I hope you do get to Canada. We want to have you here, and I hope you come down here.
Thank you.
Yeah, we hope you come down here to the Maritimes here in New Brunswick and perform for us here in Fredericton. Excuse me. I would love to see you live.
Wonderful. I'd love that. Well, see if you feel free to request us on your local radio, and if we get a little radio play, then maybe we can come up with an opportunity to perform. So either Lili Haydn or Opium Moon.
Okay, give your web pages and stuff a plug here so people know where to get your music again.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes. Well, it's LiliHaydn.com. It's spelled a little funny, so I'm just going to spell it for you. It's LiliHayd for dog, N for November. There's no E between the D and the N. .com. LiliHaydn.com and OpiumMoon.com. Opium, like the perfume or the drug, and OpiumMoon.com. And please feel free to reach out to me if anybody, if you're you want to, have more contact. Thank you.
I would love to get a signed CD. Is there a way that can be arranged?
Absolutely. If you send me your address, I will send it to you.
I would gladly pay for it too. I have no problem with that.
Well, let's discuss that after we. Yes. Well, I will allow you only because the the state of affairs today is most people don't know what to do with a CD, and they're so used to being able to stream things for free that music that is quality has been devalued, and it has really hurt it's made it so that people that it's a lot harder for people to do music as a full-time gig.
I still buy CDs.
You know, God bless you. Thank you so much for doing that. That's great.
So that's
Well,
why I say
the more we do this, the more people will be able to make quality music. You know, it's really important to, it's really important to support music and to value music because today it's really, most people don't know the value of, I mean, for instance, I've worked on songs for 3 years, and then and people pay $5 for a cup of coffee sometimes, so but they won't pay 99 cents for a song,
Yeah.
So it that I spent 5 years of my life on. So it really the more we value music, I think the better music we'll get. So thank you. So I will allow you to buy the CD in the spirit of elevating the value of music.
I would
So thank you, and I
gladly.
would love to send you one.
Yes, and sign it for me, and yeah, I'd play it here on the show. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, I did send you a bunch of music, actually, so hopefully you'll be able to include some of that in the show.
Yeah, well, I could play that in my live show. I do my live show Sundays, and that's why I just record the interviews. But yeah, I would gladly buy a CD from you, and yeah, that way I'd have it on. I can play anytime, and that way you get the financial support as well. As artists.
Thank you so much. Thank
Yes.
you. Well, let's discuss that over email. We can figure out how to do that if you and just send me your address and we'll figure it out.
Sure, absolutely. Now, before you go, would you mind doing a plug for my show?
Absolutely. Tell me what to say.
Just state your name and say you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise out of New Brunswick, Canada. You got all that?
All right. I think I can. I'll do my best.
Okay, go for it.
Hey, this is Lili Haydn, and you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise in New Brunswick, Canada.
Love you, Lily, and I wish you the best. And please, yes, come to Canada.
Thanks so much.
We need lovely people like you here.
Well, thanks so much, and have a great day.
Awesome.
Great
You
night,
take
I should
care.
say.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.